It being Friday, it is Brunch with Bernie. Time for Senator Bernie Sanders' National Town Hall meeting. Brunch with Bernie here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Bernie will be taking your calls at 866-987-THOM in just a few minutes. Senator and Senator re-elect, congratulations on your electoral victory and welcome to the program.
Thanks very much, Tom.
And Bernie, I understand you won this victory without running a single TV ad. Isn't that a real testimonial to what happens if you tell the truth and you do good retail politics?
Well, all I can say, Tom, is I just want to thank the people of the state of Vermont very much for their very strong support. We got over 70% of the vote, and I did not run any TV ads. We did a little bit of radio the last few days. But, you know, we have, during this campaign, what we did is we have held close to 50 town meetings, political town meetings, all over the state of Vermont, including some of the really smallest towns. Town of about 300 people, we had 100 people out to talk at length about the real crises facing this country. And I much prefer to do those type of activities than put ugly 30-second ads on the air. In fact, I've never run a negative ad, but I think I'd rather invest in town meetings, and we had a lot of staff and volunteers knocking on doors, talking to people. In my view, Tom, the future of progressive politics has to do with building a strong grassroots movement, face-to-face discussions, and good meetings where we go over serious issues rather than just 30-second ads. So that's something I believe very strongly. And I guess, again, want to thank the people of Vermont and people all over this country who have been so supportive for my candidacy.
Yeah, it really is. It's wonderful that you were reelected and you're back with us. I'm curious your thoughts on the general election, where the Democratic Party, where the nation is going forward from here.
Well, Tom, it was if we understand that the billionaires, the dozens of billionaires in this country, spent hundreds of millions of dollars trying to defeat President Obama and trying to defeat progressive candidates all over this country, you have got to conclude that Tuesday was a very, very good day for working families around this country. Democrats won 25 out of the 33 seats that were up, which is just extraordinary. We elected, not only re-elected, some great senators, people like Sherrod Brown, against whom $30 million in Ohio was spent by super PACs. But we elected people like Tammy Baldwin in Wisconsin, Elizabeth Warren in Massachusetts, Mazie Hirono in Hawaii. We're going to have good, strong, progressive voices in this coming Congress. So it's not only a victory. We elected some really very good people. We also won some more seats in the House. So I would say that all in all, the American people made it very clear on Election Day that they are not sympathetic to right-wing extremism, that they do not want to see the deficit balanced on the backs of the elderly, the children, the sick, and the poor. They want to deal with deficit reduction, but a way that is fair. Obama campaigned on making sure that the wealthiest people in this country begin to pay their fair share of taxes, and that is what the American people confirmed. That's what they want. I think we also saw a rejection of extremism in terms of Citizens United. A couple more states now came on board and saying that we need a constitutional amendment to deal with this horrendous Supreme Court decision, which says that a corporation is a person in terms of campaign spending, and that's a step forward. I think we saw a victory on Tuesday for the understanding that global warming is real. There's some recent studies coming out making the situation very, very dire. And if we don't get our act together and start substantially cutting back on greenhouse gas emissions, moving to sustainable energy, this planet is going to be in very, very serious trouble. Just a report came out talking about very alarming raises in the temperature of the Earth over the next many, many years, and we have got to address that. I would say, Tom, that this election was also a victory for women's rights. A number of women and strong women were elected, and those candidates who had absurd reactionary positions on women's rights were soundly defeated. In some cases, in both cases, candidates who we thought were going to win, Republican candidates in Indiana and Missouri who were favored to win. Women said, excuse me, you're not going to roll back 50 years of gain in this country. We want gender equality. We're not going back to second-class citizenship for women. And that was a huge victory. But having said all of that, and as someone who worked very, very hard for Obama in New Hampshire, where he won a good victory, what we have got to do now is to make sure that the Democrats and the Democratic leadership and the president understand they won and the Republicans lost. And that means that the fight has got to be for progressive politics now and not start making concessions all over the place to the Republicans who lost. And that makes me very nervous. So what we have got to do right now, and I'll be going back to Washington on Tuesday, is to say, yup, we are going to deal with deficit reduction. It's a serious issue, but we're going to remember how we got to where we were. That in 2001, when Clinton left office, we had a $236 billion surplus. Bush's wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, his tax breaks for the rich, unpaid for Medicare Part D program, and the lack of revenue coming in because of this Wall Street-caused recession. That's why we have a $1 trillion deficit. Mm-hmm. That's the reason. And we are not going to cut Social Security, which had nothing to do with the deficit. We're not going to cut benefits for Medicare or Medicaid, but we are going to ask the wealthiest people in this country who are doing phenomenally well at a time when we have the most unequal distribution of wealth and income of any major country on earth. Class warfare has been waged by billionaires against working families in this country. Well, we just had an election, and the billionaires and their lobbyists lost. And now it is absolutely imperative that we move forward in a way that asks the wealthiest people and the largest corporations, 1/4 of which are not paying a nickel in federal corporate income taxes, despite the fact they make billions in profits. We are going to address this absurdity of companies and individuals able to stash their money in the Cayman Islands and in Bermuda through these tax havens, avoid paying over $100 billion in taxes to the United States government. And we are going to continue our effort to make sure that everybody in this country has health care as a right. As I mentioned before, we are going to protect women's rights. We're going to address global warming. We're going to make college affordable. We won this election. They didn't. They lost. And the Democrats now have got to get accustomed to the fact that they won, and have got to understand that they are in the driver's seat. And I got to say one other thing, and we're going to be dealing with this very shortly. And we get a lot of calls on this program about this issue, Tom. And that is the issue of filibuster reform. It's an issue that has got to be addressed. The minority cannot determine policy to the majority. Minority deserve their rights. We have to protect those rights. But we need filibuster reform to end the obstructionism that we have seen over the last 4 years.
Yeah, and we're hearing a lot of noises from Harry Reid that he's leaning in that direction. Are we not?
Well, Harry Reid, by the way, just came out the other day. And I spoke to Harry just yesterday evening. Harry came out and said that Social Security should not be part of the deficit reduction discussion because Social Security had nothing to do with that deficit. And Harry is absolutely right. And he is talking about filibuster reform, which is a very good sign.
All right, good. Senator Bernie Sanders with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour, our national town hall meeting with Senator Sanders. Your calls start right after this break. Stick around. It's 15 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. You can check out Bernie's website at sanders.senate.gov or at thomhartmann.com.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Back with your calls for just newly reelected Senator Bernie Sanders. I think of him as America's senator right after this. Welcome back. And Joan in Ludington, Michigan, watching us on Free Speech TV. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Yeah,
Joan?
I'd like to know about Medicare. I was horrified last week. A lady was paying full fare for her son who was handicapped, and she bought one of these little indoor electric scooters. And that scooter cost her as much as a full-size car would cost. I was horrified. If these manufacturers are able to get away with that, then probably Medicare is paying too much for these things too. It seems to me,
Joan, I think Joan makes an important point.
Thank you, John.
Joan makes an important point. I am going to do everything that I can to make sure that Medicare benefits are not cut. Here in Vermont, we want to move forward to something stronger than exists around the rest of the country, and that is a Medicare for all single-payer system. But Joan makes a point. There are people in the healthcare industry who are ripping off folks, and they're ripping off the system. And it's not only folks who produce products like little scooters that Joan is talking about, but you have many drug companies who have been found guilty or reached settlements with the United States government for ripping off Medicare and Medicaid in a variety of ways. You have some doctors out there who are ripping off the system, and that is unacceptable. In my view, everybody in this country is entitled to health care. It's got to be done in a cost-effective way, and we talk about cost-effectiveness. We have got to end these rip-offs and scandals that take place. So I think Joan makes a very good point.
David in Hutchinson, Kansas. You're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Thank you for taking my call, Tom, and congratulations on your reelection, Senator.
Thank you.
My question is about Obamacare. I was reading in an article here in a local paper that Governor Brownback has done nothing toward getting prepared for Obamacare. There were a couple of things it cited in the paper, and I can't remember what
it's the health exchanges, now. David. If I may interrupt you, can we toss this to Bernie because it's just a minute before the break?
Yeah, David, thanks very much for that very good question, because I think Kansas is probably not alone on this. David, here's the story: the federal government passed legislation, health care legislation, so-called Obamacare, far from perfect, but it has some very, very positive things into it. Among many other things, what it will do is expand Medicaid to another 30 million people, including folks in the state of Kansas. And my hope is that not just in Kansas, but in all of those states where you have governors who say, we don't want that, I would hope that working people and people who have children and people who are worried about pre-existing conditions and people who want to see that their kids under the age of 26 are kept on their insurance policies, stand up and tell those governors, sorry, we want in. We want to improve this program, but we don't want you to deny us this very important federal legislation that was passed.
It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. We'll be back with more of your questions for Senator Sanders right after this. He is the man, Senator Bernie Sanders, with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour, taking your calls. Dustin, listening or watching on our iPhone app in Maryland Heights, Missouri. You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi, Senator. I just watched House Speaker Boehner's press conference, and he, like Paul Ryan before him, is somehow trying to reframe the issue of raising the top marginal tax rate as a general attack on small business owners in general. Right. I know Tom likes to say that figures don't lie, but liars can figures. But what kind of deceptive number crunching are they using here? Who are they counting as small businesses? I'm a small business owner, and I certainly don't make $388,000 a year. Can you help explain this to me?
Yeah, well, I think, Dustin, you're exactly right. They're using a lot of deceptive numbers. And they do that, by the way, if I may say, not only in terms of the top tax rates, they do that in terms of the estate tax as well. What they want to do is repeal the estate tax, which primarily benefits the top 0.3% of Americans, the very wealthiest families. Huge tax breaks for the wealthiest families in this country. I think, Dustin, you're right. What they are trying to do is confuse the American people. What our view is that 98% of the American people who earn less than $250,000 a year, should not be asked to pay more in taxes. And we're going to protect the tax breaks for those people. But what we are also going to do is say that when the very wealthiest people in this country are doing phenomenally well, we are going to ask them to pay more. And ironically, by the way, even people who are making more than $250,000, they're also going to get a tax break on their first part of their income below $250,000. They will also get a tax break. But for that income above $250,000, we have $1 trillion deficit, and they are going to have to pay more in taxes.
Catherine in Los Angeles, California. You're on the air with Senator Bernie Sanders.
Hi, congratulations, Senator Sanders. And I love your show, Tom. My question is regarding, Prop 37. I was really disappointed that it didn't pass, but it seemed like there was a lot of obstruction of voting in Los Angeles, and I don't know about across California, but I ended up having to vote provisionally because I never received an official ballot in the mail, and all of the neighbors in my building also never received one. So those votes haven't gotten counted, and I guess it's not mandatory for them to count them. So I was just wondering, your take on that.
Well, thank you, Catherine. And I'm actually not familiar with what happened in L.A., but I am familiar with what's happening around the rest of the country. In general, election laws are made at the statewide level, but the federal government certainly has a responsibility also because members of Congress and members and the president are elected under those laws as well. I think what I saw on television in terms of Florida and I think other places as well, where people were waiting on lines for 5, 6, 7 hours, it is so insulting, so outrageous that in the United States of America, we are looking like a third or a fourth world country in making it extraordinarily difficult for people to participate in the democratic processes guaranteed them by the Constitution of this country. So I think from one end of this country to the other, we're going to have to take a hard look at election law. Here in Vermont, I walked into my polling station, and within 2 minutes, I was out. That's it. You walk in, you get checked in, you vote, and you're out. That should be going on all over this country. I suspect there are many, many people who, when they saw these long lines in Florida and elsewhere, said, you know what, I got a job, I got a kid, I'm not feeling well. I don't want to wait online 3 hours or 5 hours. So we have got to work on that. When people want to vote, they should be able to vote in a timely manner. It should be easier for people to register to vote. It's absurd that in your case you never received that, your registration. And this is something that we have got to work on. It is a very, very big issue.
Is it Hodan or Hodan in Loganville, Georgia?
Yeah, hi, it's Hodan. And I've spoken with you before, Tom.
You are on the air with Senator Sanders.
And thank you. Hi, Senator Sanders. My question is, I live in the South. I live in Georgia, and we have had, I'm a very progressive person. My first election that I voted in was Al Gore. And then since then, I've really voted for third parties because my vote really doesn't count, being in a red state. But my question that I have is, I'm really scared that Obama is going to basically do the grand bargain, which I think of as a grand sellout. So what is your, you and other progressives, do you guys have any plans to speak with Obama and to basically convince him not to do it?
Short answer is absolutely yes. We'll be meeting with the majority leader next week. And as I said earlier, and Hodan, thanks very much for raising that issue. And a couple of points need to be made. The Democrats won a major victory. And in fact, they're going to be even stronger next year at the beginning of the next session than they are right now. So I think we are in a position to be determining policy. I do not want to see Democrats caving in. They have done that in the past. So that without going into all kinds of details that I shouldn't go into, Houghton, yes, the answer is absolutely. Some of us are working very, very hard on this issue. Just this morning, I was on a conference call with senior groups and veterans organizations, making it very clear in a letter that over 50 veterans and senior groups sent to congressional leaders that we are not going to accept cuts in benefits for Social Security beneficiaries or disabled veterans, which is part of what some of our friends there have in mind. So to answer Houghton's question, she raises a great issue. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that there is not a caving in.
And all of us out here in the hustings, we should be calling our members of Congress and saying the same thing, right, Bernie?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. We'll be right back with more of Senator Bernie Sanders.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 866-987-THOM.
It's our national town hall meeting, Brunch with Bernie. Senator Bernie Sanders on the line with us. Sanders.senate.gov. Check out his website. We'll be right back. Thom Hartmann here on the news. You need to know this. If Republicans really care about reducing the deficit and helping the economy, then they'll let the Bush tax cuts for the rich expire. The Congressional Budget Office released a report Thursday on the economic effects of this looming fiscal cliff. It found that among all the consequences of going off that fiscal cliff, allowing the Bush tax cuts to expire for the very rich will have the least negative effect on the economy. Extending all the Bush tax cuts for everyone will boost U.S. GDP growth by 1.5%, whereas extending all the Bush tax cuts for everyone except those making more than $250,000 a year will boost GDP growth by 1.25%, meaning they have a negligible effect on economic growth beyond just giving millionaires a couple $1,000,000 for their bank accounts. Mitt Romney did his best to protect tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires like himself, but in the end, Democrats clearly want a mandate on Tuesday to raise taxes on the rich. And if it takes going off the fiscal cliff to ensure the rich pay their fair share again, then so be it. In screwed news, there are reports that the notorious manufacturing company Foxconn, known for abusing workers to produce Apple products in China and Taiwan, is looking to open up factories in the United States. At Foxconn factories overseas, workers endure 12-hour shifts in atrocious factory conditions and are forced to live in crowded dorms with fellow co-workers. Workers routinely fall ill from chemicals, and 17 workers have killed themselves over the past 5 years. Nets are installed around the factory to catch people who jump out of the windows or off the roof. And now Foxconn may be coming to the United States, where Americans are desperate for jobs. While we do have better labor standards than developing nations, Republicans are working to scrap protections for workers and have declared everything from workplace safety laws to minimum wage laws unconstitutional. If Republicans get their way, then America will be the new home to sweatshop labor. In the best of the rest of the news, believe it or not, Republicans are learning lessons from their resounding defeat on Tuesday. To begin with, Speaker of the House John Boehner acknowledged that the fight about Obamacare is over. According to ABC News, when asked about future prospects of trying to repeal Obamacare in the House, Speaker Boehner accepted that the fight was over, saying, quote, "The election changes that. Obamacare is law of the land," end quote. Though he did later backtrack from those comments. But on the issue of immigration, Republicans are drastically changing their position now that President Obama won 75% of the Latino vote. Several prominent Republicans, including Speaker Boehner, former Governor Haley Barbour, Senator Jerry Moran, and even Sean Hannity, have called for a more moderate immigration stance within the Republican Party post-election, including a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants currently living in the United States. Republicans must accept the fact that comprehensive immigration reform is supported by the majority of Americans. Republican House Oversight Committee Chairman and former small-time crook Darrell Issa has launched witch hunt after witch hunt against the Obama administration since taking the gavel in 2011. But now someone may be investigating him. The organization Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, or CREW, is accusing Issa of again violating House ethics rules. Days after the election, Issa used his committee's resources to upload a YouTube video attacking the president over State Department dinner spending. As Crew asserts, the ad had nothing to do with ICE's work on the Oversight Committee and was a blatant attack ad against the president. According to ethics rules, committee resources, which are funded by taxpayer dollars, cannot be used for political campaigns. Rather than addressing the allegations directly, a spokesperson for ISA attacked Crew as a partisan organization. What's the point of government oversight when the guy in charge is himself a crook and a liar? According to new election spending data, Tuesday was a good day for women's rights and a bad day for guns. The Sun Life Foundation is reporting that Planned Parenthood political organizations spent 98% of their money this election cycle on winning candidates. On the other hand, NRA political organizations spent just 1% of their money on winning candidates. However, it's not all bad news for the NRA. With another 4 years of the Obama presidency, right-wing crazies claiming guns will be confiscated will spur a lot more gun sales. Already, gun manufacturers like Smith & Wesson are seeing their stocks soar. On Wednesday, Smith & Wesson saw its stock shoot up 9.6%, its biggest gain since early September. Ironically, in reality, President Obama has expanded gun rights during his first term in office. And finally, Karl Rove has a lot of splaining to do. The world watched on Tuesday night as Rove desperately tried to deny the math showing President Obama won re-election. That's because he knows he'll have to answer to the millionaires and billionaires he took $300 million from and to whom he guaranteed a victory for Romney. Rove continued his explanation tour in a recently published op-ed for the Wall Street Journal, blaming Obama's re-election on everything from Hurricane Sandy to New York Times editors to hotel employees who may have filmed Romney's infamous 47% comments. The one person he didn't blame in the op-ed was, guess who? Himself. Rove thought he could buy the election this year, but ultimately organized people overcame organized money. We should all be proud of this and acknowledge that when election time comes around again, Rove and his oligarchs will try even harder and spend even more to win one for the billionaires, which is why we should amend the Constitution to reverse Citizens United. Go to movetoamend.org. And that's the way it is today, Friday, November 9th, 2012. I'm Thom Hartmann on the news. Welcome back. It's Thom Hartmann here with you and Senator Bernie Sanders on the line. Our Brunch with Bernie Hour, a national town hall meeting with the guy I think of as America's senator, although the good citizens of Vermont, I was one for a decade, I know it well, are very, very proud that he's their senator. They just reelected him. And Matt in East Jordan, Michigan, listening on Sirius Satellite Radio, Sirius XM. You are on the air, Senator Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, thank you, Tom, Senator. Article in Business Insider yesterday claimed that they cited both Canadian government officials and officials from the Enbridge company that the Obama administration's approval of the Keystone Pipeline is imminent. Basically, they said it was a done deal. Do you think that's true, Senator? And can the Keystone Pipeline be blocked in the Senate? Thank you.
Well, Matt, I don't know the truth of that story, but this is what I do know. There was a report that was just published just the other day. It was actually in the Washington Post, which talked about scientists now concluding that in terms of their fears and their projections for the rise in the temperature of the planet, they are now looking at the worst case scenario. In other words, their projections now suggest that the situation is very, very dire. And by the end of this century, we're looking at a 7 or 8 degree increase in the temperature of the Earth, which would be absolutely catastrophic. So I think we should not be, obviously, approving a Keystone Pipeline. I think that we have got to move in a very, very aggressive and bold way to cut greenhouse gas emissions, to move away from oil, to move away from coal, and to move to sustainable energy. I mean, we are really now playing with the future of this planet. What we saw a couple of weeks ago, the devastation, terrible devastation that we saw in New Jersey and in New York with Hurricane Sandy, that may be just the beginning of what we're going to be seeing more and more of, and hurricanes that are not only more frequent but more severe. This planet, not only the United States, has got to get its act together and start cutting greenhouse gas emissions, moving away from fossil fuel and not moving in the way of a Keystone Pipeline.
Robin in Champlain, Minnesota. You're on the air, Senator Sanders.
Hi, Tom, and congratulations, Senator Sanders. I heard Representative James Clyburn say today that they plan on raising the Social Security age 2 years, and he has enough votes to cover it, and that way the Republicans will accept taxes. Have you heard anything on that line?
Well, Robin, what I have heard, no, I'm not familiar with what Congressman Clyburn has said, but I am strongly opposed to that. You got a lot of working people in this country who have worked for decade after decade after decade, and they deserve a decent retirement at a reasonable age and not to continue to work beyond the years that they should be working. What I have heard, of course, is that there are a number of different schemes, one of them being raising the retirement age, another one being the so-called chain CPI, which would lower the cost of living adjustments, the COLAs, that seniors and, by the way, disabled veterans receive. So there are a number of different ideas out there on how you can cut Social Security. I am strongly opposed to any of them and all of them because, among other things, Social Security has not contributed one nickel to the deficit and it has a $2.7 trillion surplus. Social Security can pay out all benefits owed to eligible Americans for the next 21 years. Our goal is to make sure Social Security is solvent for 75 years, and there are ways to do that. But I am not going to support, and I will vigorously oppose, as chairman of the Defending Social Security Caucus, raising the retirement age for Social Security or cutting benefits.
Okay. John in Minneapolis, Minnesota. You're on the air, Senator Sanders.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call, and congratulations on your win, Senator. I just wanted to say, I'm just appalled at the voter suppression, and as Tom had said, it is undermining democracy. I don't remember your exact words, but it's just terrible, and I wonder if there is anything proposed, any kind of legislation to standardize voting throughout the country. My 81-year-old father and my 80-year-old mother voted in Florida, and they went from, I think, three precincts down to one, so it increased the time. They had to wait an hour and a half. My mother is quite elderly, sick, rather, and had to sit down, and it was somewhat stressful for them to have to do that when it usually took them about 15 minutes, and the population has not decreased. And I think Florida can afford voting machines, but that's what they did in Hernando County, Florida. And my experience here was, as usual, the last 20 years that I've been here, 15 minutes. And I just am appalled that, they are suppressing the vote. That is the kind of thing that happens in third world countries.
No, John, you're absolutely, let me just jump in and say this, John. You are absolutely right. This is a national disgrace. I think clearly in some cases it is quite intentional. My guess is that the upper middle class voting in suburbs all over America probably did not have to wait 5 hours to vote. They got in and out pretty quickly. But among minority communities, working class communities, low income communities, you have these backup lines. And I think in some cases it is very clear what the goal here was, and that is voter suppression. Make it as difficult as possible for those people who are going to vote against Republicans to participate in the political process. That is an absolute outrage. And you ask me, can anything be done? And the answer is yes. And I think the federal government has got to step in. I don't have the solution right in front of me, but I think we have got to make it very clear that people in America do not wait 5 hours, 3 hours to vote. You know, you go into any large store in this country, you go into a Walmart, you go into a Costco, you don't wait 5 hours to pay your damn bill. You walk in and you walk out. There's a line, they move the line. Democracy is more important than shopping at Walmart and Costco. If they can do it, we can do it. So it is an issue that we have got to address, and no longer can people be forced to wait online hour after hour in order to be part of American democracy.
That is the perfect metaphor or analogy there, Bernie. Lynn Marie in Portland, Oregon, watching. Lynn Marie, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Hi, congratulations, Senator.
Thank you.
I do live out here. You're welcome. I do live out in Oregon, where we have vote by mail. So maybe voter suppression isn't going to be that obvious. But even though I liked your pep talk on being, bigger, stronger, and bolder because we won, but, as of this coming Monday, our one radio channel here, KPOJ, where we get to listen to you guys, Carl Wolfson, Randy Rhodes, Ed Schultz, that's being taken away from us. So no more progressive radio out here, which is almost seems like retaliation for the election by Clear Channel. And I'm just wondering if, even though we won, don't we still need to be on our toes and be alert to dirty tricks and things like that that's going to be continued by the Carl Roves of the world?
Lynn Marie, thank you for the call. Let me just jump in here and say I don't see any evidence that this is a political game that's being played by Clear Channel, but it is happening. KPOJ is going away.
Well, Lynn raises an important point, Tom, and it touches on a broader issue that some of us in the Senate have tried to deal with, and that is the understanding, that politics and democracy is not just one day every 2 years or every 4 years. It is a very serious problem in this country that we have extreme right-wing talk radio hosts who dominate talk radio in America. Tom, I always forget what you tell me here, but it's well over 90% of talk radio hours are dominated by extreme right-wingers.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, well over that.
So we have some great people. Thom Hartmann at the top of the list, Ed Schultz, Randy Rhodes, Stephanie Miller. There's some great folks and many others who are out there doing a great job, but they are outnumbered 9-1, 10-1. And this issue, Lynn, that you're raising, and it's not just a decision being made in Oregon. We have got to figure out a way that the American people can hear on radio and see on television perspectives that are different than Rush Limbaugh or Sean Hannity. And that's a major, major issue. I think there are states in this country, in the Deep South and elsewhere, where people cannot hear an alternative point of view to right-wing extremism. And therefore, we should not be surprised that kids growing up just hearing that stuff end up adopting that particular philosophy. So this is an issue we have got to work on very, very hard.
And just for the record, to that point, for our listeners in Portland, we do have a web app, Thom Hartmann app. There is a Progressive Voices app, which gives all of the people that Bernie just named. That we all have websites. We're all seeing this grow. In fact, the listening, KPOJ had been doing spectacularly well. The ratings actually are up, and have been. But in any case, we'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Senator Bernie Sanders answering your questions in our national town hall meeting. More with Bernie right after this. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Senator Bernie Sanders on the line. Is it Laurel in Adrian? Laurel.
Laurel.
Okay, in Adrian, Minnesota. You are on the air with the Senator Sanders.
I'm not going to chastise you for getting my name wrong. Everybody gets my name wrong.
Okay, thank you.
But thanks for taking my call, Tom, and congratulations, Bernie, on your reelection. It's a great day for America to see you're going to be around in the Senate for another 6 years. I wish you could be around for another 60, in my opinion. But anyway, it's a great day here in Minnesota as well. I believe we were the only state in the union that saw both the state House and state Senate flip Republican to Democrat this year in our election. And plus, we kept discrimination off of our state constitution by saying no to the definition of marriage amendment that they were trying to put on us. So discrimination at least is off our constitution for now. And
Laurel, let me just jump in. I just talked to Al Franken yesterday. I talked to Amy Klobuchar the other day. Congratulations. You guys did a fantastic job, and I know it didn't happen by accident. I know you had thousands and thousands of people at the grassroots working hard, and you made it happen. So congratulations, Laurel.
Laurel, you're still on the air. Laurel's not.
How hard are you twisting his arm on getting something done about this silly filibuster rule?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, we are. We are. There is a lot of conversation going on right now to end this absurd situation where a minority in the United States Senate can block the workings of the United States government. In my view, in the Senate, we have to protect minority rights. That's just what the Senate is. People should have ample time to voice their concerns about an issue, make their points, offer amendments. That's part of the democratic process. But the minority cannot be allowed to dominate the majority, and to a significant degree, that is what has been happening over the last 4 years. Harry Reid, who's the majority leader, made a point a couple of weeks ago where he said when Lyndon Johnson was majority leader during his tenure, if my memory is correct, he had one filibuster. That's correct. One filibuster back in the 1950s. Harry Reid, since he's been majority leader, had to deal with hundreds of 60-vote amendments and pieces of legislation. That is wrong. That is absolutely wrong. So to answer Laurel's point, filibuster reform is something we must deal with in law, so that the majority can prevail and not the minority.
And Bernie, in the minute before that we hit the break here, isn't this all the more important given that we've got several members of the Supreme Court who, in all probability, over the next 4 years will be retiring?
Of course.
Who are quite elderly.
Yes. I mean, obviously, the importance of the presidential election and the control over the Senate and filibuster has everything to do to make sure that the president's nominations can, in fact, be appointed and not be stonewalled or filibustered or just simply talked to death. So, yes, to answer your question, Tom, you're absolutely right in saying that Supreme Court nominations are going to be a very important factor in the next few years, and the president should be allowed to make his appointments without undue obstructionism.
Yeah, and it seems that without the filibuster, he would feel free to maybe put in somebody even more progressive than he would if he was concerned about a filibuster. So
I think that's true.
Yeah. Okay, Senator Bernie Sanders with us. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Back with more Bernie right after this. 10 minutes before the end. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. It's our Brunch with Bernie hour. Senator Bernie Sanders answering your questions in our national town hall meeting. Steve in Wake Forest, North Carolina. You are on the air, Senator Sanders.
Well, thank you for taking my call, Tom. Mr. Senator Sanders, I'd like to congratulate you on your win in Vermont.
Thank you.
What I'd like to talk about today is the mandate that I see as being apparently, put out there from Americans in this last election that gives Obama and his agenda a way forward. I'd like to all your viewers contact their representatives, especially if you're living in a state that voted for Obama. If you have a Republican representative, please contact them and light a fire into them, letting them know that their job is on the line in 2 or 4 years, and that they need to do what we are asking them to do right now and represent us and not their corporate interests. what are your thoughts on the mandate that exists itself now,
Steve,
and on the apparent already Republican denial?
Steve, you said it better than I could. The point that Steve made is absolutely 100% right. Obama won a very strong victory, 3 million more votes in the popular vote. Democrats did extremely well, much better than anyone dreamed possible in the Senate. Democrats won some seats in the House. What Steve is saying is that for us to be successful all over this country, people have got to start emailing, and it is not just Democratic senators. It is Republican senators and Republican members of the House. You have to say, we do not want to, among other things, see this budget being balanced and deficit reduction taking place on the backs of the elderly, people who are struggling, seniors out there making $14,000, $15,000 a year income. They should not have to take cuts in Social Security when Social Security hasn't added one penny to the deficit. We're going to protect our veterans. We're going to protect our children. We're going to protect working families. In this country today, let me repeat, we have the most unequal distribution of wealth and income of any major country on earth, and it is getting worse. Top 1% owns 42% of the wealth. Bottom 60% owns 2.3% of the wealth. That is not only obscene unto itself, it is very bad economics, because you don't get your economy moving. You don't create jobs unless working people are spending money, and today they don't have the money to spend. So Steve's point is right on, and that is, yeah, the election ended on Tuesday. We ought to get back to work right now, and that is get on the phone, get on your computer, and let your members of Congress know that you want them to represent working families and the middle class. Trust me, the billionaires and corporate interests of all of the lobbyists they need down in Washington, D.C. And it's time that Congress started representing the average people in this country and not the very wealthy. And we can make that happen. We can make it happen. If millions of people get on the phone and say, no cuts to Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid, demand that the wealthy and the large corporations start paying their fair share, end these absurd tax havens, take a hard look at military spending and other issues. We can do deficit reduction in a way that's fair. So, Steve, thank you. You're right. People have got to get to the phone. And by the way, I wanted to mention that now that the campaign is over, we in the Senate office my Senate office can start sending out a whole lot of emails. We couldn't do that by Senate rules because of the campaign. Our address is sanders.senate.gov. If people want to hear from us on a regular basis about what's happening in Washington, please go to my website, sanders.senate.gov.
And sign up for the Bernie Buzz.
Absolutely.
For your newsletter. It's a great one. Desmond in Fort Wayne, Indiana. You're on the air, Senator Sanders.
Hey, how you doing? It's an honor to talk to both of you gentlemen. Congratulations, Senator Sanders, on your victory, and to all of us on a great win for our side this election. I just want to mention to you, Senator, that even out here in Tea Party crazy land, I did get your direct mailer, and I appreciate it. I was able to share that with members of my family, those who haven't been completely brainwashed anyway. And I think it helped make an impact because we did help send a Democrat to the Senate. I think that was a very important pickup nationally. And I encourage a lot of other folks maybe to do the same. Let's just say I wasn't surprised that I got the one that I got from you, because you've always been, I think, kind of ahead of the game when it came to preaching truth to power and also to getting that kind of information into the hands of the average American that really needs to see it.
Well, Desmond, thanks very much. And let me congratulate the people of Indiana for standing up to right-wing extremism. What you did was enormously important, and thank you for that.
Okay. Mike in Elmwood Park, Illinois. We have 2 minutes to the end of the show, or the end of this hour, rather. Mike, you're on the air with Senator Sanders.
Good afternoon. Thanks for taking my call, Mr. Hartmann. Senator Sanders, thank you very much, and congratulations. Very quickly, we have two lines drawn in the sand. We have the president's mandate that we're going to increase the taxes very marginally on the top income, and we have the speaker's statement that he will accept no such deal. Even though we have, of course, the 2 out of 3, if you will, obviously we can't have 66% of a deal. What mechanisms or what realistic ways do you see that we're going to get past this, or do you think that in the end the speaker will eventually
Let me get right to Bernie, Mike, because we've just have 50 seconds left.
Mike, good question, thanks. Look, the speaker is in a very difficult position. And the reason for that is that his view is a minority view in America. People absolutely understand that when the rich get richer and their effective tax rate is very low, that they are going to have to help this country in terms of deficit reduction. The speaker does not have a whole lot of cards to play. Time is on our side. And what we have got to do is stand tall and say to the speaker that we're going to go to every section of this country, and we're going to ask the people, no matter what state it is, whether they think we should cut Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid, or ask billionaires to pay a little bit more in taxes. And you know what, Steve? You know what, Mike? On that issue, we have overwhelming support. So we're going to win this fight. Democrats have got to remain strong and tough.
There you go. Senator Bernie Sanders. Bernie, thanks so much for being with us today.